Hi there, Fiona Pearman and Kate Bora. We're continuing our conversation about confidence and commitment. And this week it's all about how individuals can leverage confidence to honour the commitments they're made. And we know that the more we do this, the more we reinforce a pattern that means we're more likely to honour commitments in the future. Firstly, we think it's most important to get clear on your why. Before you commit to something, if you're not sure or if there's any hesitation or doubt and you don't know why it's important, it's far less likely you'll want to follow through. So, by aligning commitments to what's important to us, to our values, to our goals, we remove that kind of sense of obligation or having to do something because it's important to someone else rather than ourselves. So, finding what's important will mean we're more likely to stick with it even when it gets tough.
Yeah, I think the next thing is to set realistic expectations. And in my experience, this is hard for people, right? We often overestimate what we can do in a short period of time, underestimate what we can do in a long period of time. And so when we're thinking about the expectations of ourselves, it's thinking about timeframes, but also thinking about outcomes specifically. One of the ways that I like to work with this is really think about like, what's the bare minimum commitment that I'm willing to make? That I'm willing to get up, out of bed or go out at midnight if that's what it meant I had to do in order to honor that commitment. And I think that thinking cycle really helps us calibrate what's possible, not just in context of our work demands, but our life demands as well. And then once we follow through on that and we get some evidence that that worked, and in fact, I was able to do it more than once a week, we can then start to calibrate and use that feedback to move forward. But I think it's a really important part of the success profile of setting and honoring the commitments we make.
Absolutely. And the third piece is really about making sure that we've prioritized what we've said is important and being selective. Active confidence number 6 is all around being able to say no with confidence. We have a tendency to overcommit. So, learning to say no with what doesn't align for now is really important. In our programs, we often talk about shifting from FOMO, the fear of missing out, to JOMO, the joy of missing out. Because when I'm really clear why I'm doing something and I've set in motion the steps to do that, then even though I may miss out on some things, they're not as important to me at this point. And so, by having that, recognition by reminding myself that this is what I'm committing to now. Saying no feels less difficult. It feels more like it's in service of what's important to me.
One of the very good coaching questions we ask clients when they're setting goals and making commitments is not just what are you saying yes to, but what do you need to say no to? And so going through that reflection process as part of commitment setting is really valuable. Now, next, accountability is the queen when it comes to really leveraging yourself to do what you say you're going to do. And we do this in our programs through buddy groups. Stories we've heard about clients who are sitting in meetings on a Monday knowing they're going to be connecting with their buddy groups on a Friday. And debriefing on the situation they're actually live and engaging in and changing their behavior because they know the feedback that their buddy's going to give. And so I always talk about understand and make it easy for yourself to say yes to the things that you know are important and that you know that maybe sometimes it will be hard to say yes, right? There'll be tensions, there'll be pulls, often quite likely fears that will leverage you to say, oh, not now, or all those sorts of things. So the accountability structures that you put in place are really critical. Exercise and I've had a very interesting relationship for many decades of my life. And I know that the really successful strategy that works for me is when I have a running partner. And if I'm meeting someone, I will every day of the week show up and meet that person because I don't want to let them down. We often let ourselves off, we'll often let ourselves down. But certainly for me, when it comes to honoring a commitment I make to someone else, that has a real high priority in terms of my decision making frame as well. So leveraging that so that you can create framework structures, rhythms to be able to make it easier. We don't want to be relying on willpower, right? Or feeling like I want to go for a run. Again, I know that that doesn't work for me as a strategy. And so I set up these accountability frames to make it easier for me to say yes to the things that I've said are important and then be able to follow through.
Yeah, I think working alongside this is being really mindful of creating a supportive environment. Surround yourself with the people, the systems, the resources that you need to support what you're committing to. And look, many of us have heard the saying that our success depends on those people in our immediate circle. In fact, it's almost the sum of the five people we're closest to. So if you notice that a lot of the people you're spending time with don't have that same level of commitment, of discipline, of follow through, of even setting plans and goals, maybe it's time to bring more of those kind of people into your world and making sure that you have that really supportive structures and environment that means you will follow through and you will be conscious that this is something I'm choosing purposefully in service of something I've said is really important, my commitment. As well as doing that, it's important to be mindful of the distractions, the things that pull us away. And that might be people, it might be overcommitments, it might be things we like doing, or just following a whim in the moment that means we won't get something done that we said was important. Being mindful of that is the first way in which we're likely to choose what we're going to follow through on and what makes sense to us.
Yeah, now inevitably, things are not always going to go perfectly, not always going to go according to plan. And so we have to be flexible, right? There will be days, there will be weeks where, we succumbed to sitting on the couch and watching Netflix, or, said yes to the work deadline and no to my fitness commitment or whatever, is present for you. And so we encourage you to use that as feedback, right? Active confidence number 5 is all about redefining failure as feedback. That structure, that specific capacity, that time frame, that outcome doesn't work or doesn't work at this point in time. And so how do I adapt my commitments so that they are doable? We don't want to allow one mistake or two to throw the entire commitment out. So it's important that we are able to reflect and review regularly and use that information to be able to inform the shifts, the choices we make. One for me was I running in the afternoon or going to the gym in the afternoon never worked because I was always faced with a choice around work commitments and health and fitness, right? And 9 times out of 10, there was always something on my work plate that was more important than me saying yes to a fitness commitment. And so I shifted the dial, even though I wasn't a huge morning person. And I started exercising in the morning. And it meant that tension point wasn't present. And I was able to say yes to myself and to my health and fitness more often.
Yeah, I think this is equally as important and applicable in our workplaces. What are we agreeing to? What are the timelines? What are the project plans? What are we doing? We know something's important. It may be really important to our boss or our boss's boss, and we can get down a rabbit hole of overcommitting to something, knowing we maybe have 3 or 4 work priorities and not having good conversations around what's most important now. How do I prioritize? The more we are reflective, the more we're willing to review and to be purposeful around what we're giving our time to, the more likely we are to actually achieve the outcome, to follow through on the commitment. And that feels so much better. It feels really awful to let people down, to miss deadlines, to overcommit. So as we are doing this work around honoring our commitments, leveraging our confidence, it's really important to be conscious of where we can have the conversations in a work setting that means we're not going to feel like so much of a failure or as though we've let the ball drop and then we haven't been able to deliver what we said we would.
We're going to leave it there. If you've enjoyed today's confidence conversation, we'd love to hear from you. And of course, we'd love for you to share it with anyone in your network who you think might find it valuable. If you want to hear more of these conversations, including the other videos in this series, head over to our YouTube channel. You'll find the series there, along with over 400 other videos, confidence conversations, client stories of women who have worked with us in the Acts of Confidence program and sharing the impact of our work in their world. And if and when you're ready to go deeper with your relationship with core confidence, visit our website, coreconfidence.com.au. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to hit subscribe on your YouTube channel for more insights on confidence, leadership, and complex work environments. We drop new videos regularly and we'd love to share them with you.